Welcome. You know what is so crazy? I had the headphones plugged into my phone, but I didn't put them in my ears. Okay, good morning. Um, I am so excited to see so many of you signing on. If you can hear me well, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Okay, Julie Dyson-Roth already gave me a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. So I'm just going to repeat everything that I already said because I don't think people heard me the first 30 seconds. So I'm so excited to do the live this morning just because I have been spending the last 30 days trying to heal my autoimmune my autoimmune disease. And the results that I got were just nothing short of astonishing. So I want to just go straight to the big announcement, the big reveal. And as I said before I had my headphones on, if you are a subscriber, you will have received an email from me a few minutes ago where I gave you all my lab results so that if you have a second device besides, if you have both a phone and a computer available, a phone and a laptop or whatever available, you can be looking at my lab results while I'm talking about them. But if you don't have that, I think everything will make sense just fine too. I'm kind of visual, like to look at it. I'm also going to do pull the really lame thing that I do where I like turn my laptop around and show it to you guys. The screen sharing, because Substack does not yet offer me to do a live from my laptop with a screen sharing option. But some of you have been like, hey, why don't you just keep doing, originally I did Zoom. And the reason why I don't like Zoom as well is because Substack automatically turns this video into a post for me. And then I can send this video out as a recording. It just makes it really easy. So anyway, yeah. So I'm just going to, in case people don't have access to that email that I just sent out, let me pull up my little graph here so that all of us could be looking at the same thing. And sorry, I just have to move it onto my laptop. Here we go. Oh, sorry, I did not have this ready. So while I'm pulling up the photo, let me just give you guys just a tad of background. So February, just in case people are brand new, they don't know the history. February, I was diagnosed with a very, very severe case of Hashimoto's disease. So what that means is that my body makes antibodies against the thyroid, and then it tags the tissue, and then a macrophage will come and it will engulf some of the tissue. So just like a white blood cell will an antibody will tag a virus or a bacteria, and then the white blood cell comes and engulfs it kind of like an amoeba and dissolves it. You don't want it doing that to your tissue. This is what happens with rheumatoid arthritis, is that the white blood cells are going to attack the joints of people, and then that's going to cause a lot of pain and swelling. And so in my case, Hashimoto is very common. My own immune system is attacking my thyroid. Why does the immune system make antibodies against the thyroid? There's not a very clear answer to that. I did write a post 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. I'm going into the different theories and the different causes. So you can search my Substack for that. If you are a paid subscriber, you will get a follow-up email with this video. And then I'll also link to that past post I wrote a few weeks ago, because I know people always have a hard time searching my Substack. Sorry, every time I look at my computer, I can't remember what I'm looking for. Okay, found it. Found it. So you can easily measure the antibodies that your body makes against the thyroid. And so I'm going to hold up this little graph for everybody to see in case you didn't get the email. Okay, so do you guys see the two orange dots? So right here, we have 127, and right here, we have 37. So what do those dots mean? Those dots are the number of antibodies in my bloodstream that are made against my thyroid. Now, of course, it's not the total amount of antibodies in my entire bloodstream, but it was the amount of antibodies in the blood sample that was taken at LabCorp, and that's very standardized. So I don't know if I can quite explain to you how incredible this is. Okay, I'm just going to show you one more time What this means is that when I started doing this gut healing autoimmune diet 4 weeks ago, that my body at some point during the first 2 weeks stopped making antibodies against my thyroid. Like the autoimmune process has stopped, and I am 3 points away from remission after 1 month. Okay, so let me show you the graph. Sorry, one more time. The gray line right there is remission, and that is 34. And I am at 37. So let me try to explain this. And by the way, if at any time you have a question or comment, just type it in that little box, and I'm super happy to stop. And also, if I know sometimes I go too fast, and feel free to say, can you say that again? Can you repeat that, or ask a clarifying question? So I just made a pretty bold claim. This gut healing diet that I did made it sometime during the first 2 weeks, made my body completely stop producing antibodies against my thyroid. Why did it do that? I'll talk about that in a second. But before I do, I'll try to explain how I know that's what happened. Because you're probably thinking, okay, wait a second, your antibodies are not zero, which is true, they're not zero. But antibodies have something called a half-life. So I asked my good friend, ChatGPT. Now, I have two good friends. Actually, I have a few good friends. They're robots and they don't know everything, but they are helpful in some ways. So I ask questions to Grok and I ask questions to ChatGPT, and I kind of compare the answers. Yesterday, Grok told me that I had asked it too many questions. So there's that. You know, I thought that was the whole point of having a robot, is that it didn't get tired of you asking questions. Okay, so thank you for asking a clarifying question, Tammy. Tammy said, what was the number at the top, your starting level, and has it come down to 37? Yes. So the very top number was 127. So like I said, not the total amount of antibodies in my body, but the amount of antibodies in the blood sample that LabCorp took was 127. Now my level has come down to 37 in 1 month. And you can see like the graph just like plummeting, like the angle of the plummeting. So what I asked Grok was, I said, no, actually, sorry, it was ChatGPT. I said, how long does an antibody live in the body? Okay, I'm just going to move so I can see the answer. So the lifespan of an IgG antibody, which is what it's also called TPO. So there's like a big category of IgG antibodies, and TPO, thyroid peroxidase, is the specific antibody that attacks thyroid tissue. So that's what we're measuring. So those live anywhere from 21 to 28 days, and some can last up to 35 days in special conditions. So I told it my numbers. I said I started at 127. I'm now at 37. And so this is what it said. Okay. It said that IgG antibodies have a half-life. So what that means is that every 21 days, if your body stops producing antibodies, every 21 days, the antibodies are going to be cut in half. Does that make sense? So after 3 weeks, they're going to be reduced by half. And so what Grok said was a drop from 127 to 37 in just 1 month. The math of that aligns perfectly with a natural decay curve of my body just stopping producing antibodies sometime in that first week. So, which is crazy, because if you have the email, see, what was the exact date? Let me pull up the email that I just sent you guys. Your post is live. Okay, so if you have the email that I just sent you, it shows you the date that I collected this was May 15th. So this was last week that I got these taken. I'm going to go back next week and do just my TPO antibodies again and see if they're even lower. But so that means that sometime in the first week of doing a gut healing diet, my body, or possibly the first 2 weeks, my body just stopped making antibodies against my thyroid. So I don't know if you guys understand how interesting this is, because if you go to a mainstream medical doctor with an autoimmune disease, it's not even like a category in their brain, unless they're just completely like have done their own research outside of medical school and they're just not a normal doctor. Like actually healing the autoimmune activity is not something that is ever talked about. It's not even something that is thought of to be possible. So it's all about, how do we stop the immune system? Like, how do we suppress the immune system is basically what it is. But it's not about how do we quit the immune system from attacking your own thyroid. So that is just so interesting. So people have asked me, are you on any medications? So I have been taking replacement thyroid hormone in the meantime until I get my thyroid back working as well. Oh yeah, Lauren said, were you on any meds as you were doing the diet? So I don't know if you really consider replacement thyroid hormone as a medication. The idea behind it is that my thyroid is not able to make very much thyroid hormone right now because of the immune system attack and how the tissue was being destroyed. So I always thought of that as a temporary thing. And I have a lot more to explain to you guys about my lab work that I sent out besides just what I'm talking about right now. And I will explain all that in a minute. But my holistic provider, she also wanted me to do something called chlorine dioxide, which I actually did not start. And she also wanted me to do something called low dose naltrexone. Now, why didn't I start chlorine dioxide? Because I love chlorine dioxide. I've read about it. I've taken it before for a short amount of time. I really am a scientist at heart, and I wanted to only do one experiment at a time. So I wanted to just see, what can I do with just doing the gut healing diet? So John Slater asked, did I miss what the gut healing diet is? One of my favorite mentors, John, who I've learned the most from, is a practitioner named Mary Ruddick, and it's spelled Ruddick. And if you just type in maryruddick.com, that takes you to her website. And she sells some guides that are very expensive. But the reason why I was willing to pay $99 for her gut healing guide is because her track record of healing people is incredible. And I've followed her enough and listened to her enough that I know that she completely aligns with stuff that I've learned. Like, her and I have learned so much independently before I even knew who she was, that she also believes that I was like, this is like my soulmate. Like, what on earth? When you're reading through your guide, she's in favor of fasting. She's in favor of ketosis, high fat. But basically what you do on the gut healing diet is you're eating soup and nothing else within a 6-hour eating window for 1 month. So the 18 hours of fasting is giving you time for your gut to repair. And 6 cups of homemade bone broth is just giving your body the raw materials that it needs to heal itself. Now, a lot of elimination diets are about what you don't eat. Sorry, Julie asked, what replacement thyroid do you take? It's a compounded T3 and T4 bioidentical form. It's not Synthroid. It's not Armor. She did not put me on Armor because there's a lot of things in Armor besides just T4 and T3 that she thinks some people react to. I didn't research thyroid medications too much because it's my goal to get off of it as soon as possible. And I actually didn't take my thyroid medication purposefully yesterday. And I will explain why, which is so interesting in a second. Because it turns out that when you're in a fasted ketogenic state, you need a fraction of the thyroid hormone that you need when you are on a high carb diet, which is so fascinating. So the tiny amount of thyroid hormone that she gave me was like way too much. But sorry, let me just finish up super quick talking about what the gut healing diet is. So a lot of elimination diets, AIP, things like that, are really focused on what you don't eat. And I would say that the difference between those, most of the other elimination diets and the one that I did, is that she's really focused on, this is what you do have to eat. It's very prescriptive. You make the soups. You can also buy them from Captain Soup. One thing that I'd like to do in June, when the super busy month of May ends, is I'd like to write my own recipes, because hers are copyrighted and I obviously can't share them. But I would like to write my own recipes using all the same ingredients and the principle, kind of write my own guide for anybody to use who wants to, so that you don't have to pay for the $99 guide. And I do not feel bad doing that because Mary Ruddick, got all of her ideas from my other favorite mentor. This book is by Natasha Campbell McBride, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. It's just the best book on the gut ever. And I always tell people, if you only read the first chapter, it is like one of the best things that I've ever read on healing the body. And I've been reading for like the last 3-4 years, like everything quality that I can possibly get my hands on about healing the body from a natural perspective. And this is the best thing that I've ever come across, ever. And the reason why I like these two ladies, and you guys know that on the internet, there's like 100 billion influencers with 100 billion different ideas about natural health. Like if we just narrow it down to natural health, I'm not even talking about like conventional medicine, like there's everybody with their ideas and stuff. But the thing that I love about these two women, oh, title again, please. Okay. Gut and Physiology Syndrome. Yeah, a lot of people will abbreviate it GAPS, GAPS. And the reason why I like her and Mary Ruddick, so Mary Ruddick based her diet that I just did off of this lady, but she tweaked it a little bit. So that's why I don't mind tweaking Mary Ruddick's diet. But tweaking it so that it's not copyrighted so that you guys can use it. But what she has a 25-year history in clinic of healing people from things that everybody says can't be healed. So we have allergies, we have autoimmune, we have arthritis, we have gut problems, fatigue, hormonal imbalances, neurological diseases. And the testimonials are just incredible. Her own son was healed from very, very, very severe autism. I believe he was 3-4. He was preschool age when she healed him of autism by healing his gut. And then since in her clinic, she's done that. So then so she's in Russia. And so then Mary Ruddick is kind of like the American version of this, like taking her principles. And then the GAPS diet is a little difficult to follow. Not super difficult, but like Mary Ruddick just like streamlined it down. And she was like, here's the 4 soup recipes you're going to eat and drink 6 cups of bone broth and nothing else. So it sounds like the most ridiculous amount of malarkey to somebody who is stuck in like the mainstream mindset. Like, I just want you guys to right now visualize me like walking into a mainstream medical facility right now and meeting with a rheumatologist and him being like, so you have an autoimmune disease. So here's your medications and you're going to be on thyroid medication for life. And just so you know, pretty much like 99% of people with Hashimoto's are just like thyroid medication for life. And so I'm sitting here thinking about this. So I'm like, so if I happen to live to be 97, like my grandma lived to be 98. So I just kind of pulled that number out. I'm 47. So I'm like, so every day for the next 50 years, I'm going to be taking thyroid medication. I'm like, not if I can help it. And maybe that is still in my future. I don't know. But the fact that my body just stopped making thyroid antibodies is like, just like blowing me away. Just based on diet. And so just imagine me like walking in and he's like, here's your prescription. I was like, you know what? Instead of taking your prescription, I'm just going to eat chicken soup for the next month. And can you imagine that, like the doctor going into the break room and just like just howling with his other employees and be like, okay, I had this crazy patient and she said that instead of taking my immunosuppressant drugs, she was going to eat soup. And I'm like, that's the funniest thing that I've ever heard. So there's something that is so broken with the mainstream medical model. It's broken because it does not understand the incredible complexity of the human body. And that's why I was just so excited to show you guys that my body just stopped making thyroid hormones. What's the future? I don't know. Is it going to start making them again if I start eating bad food? I don't know. But all I know is right now, my body stopped making thyroid antibodies against my thyroid. Like that needs to be like plastered on the New York Times, like, hello. But this stuff is never going to make it into the mainstream, which is too bad. I don't know. There's been some inroads with RFK and things like that. But okay, so I have some more things to share with you guys that I think are super interesting. So let me just look at my outline really quick and make sure. Yes, I'm going to go over the other labs. So here it goes. My ferritin, this is going to just take a super short break from talking about the thyroid. My ferritin was kind of low. The reference range is 15 to 150, which is a huge range. And as always with the labs, the reference ranges are too big. So you want to be right in the middle. And I actually don't really want to be close to 150 because too much iron can cause oxidative stress, which means just inflammation in your body. But mine was 20 and 15, even though that's into the reference range, that's a little low. So ferritin measures the storage iron, like the stores that your body has to draw on. The reason why mine were likely low is because I have very, very heavy periods, which I'm actually working on. That's an estrogen dominance problem, and I'm taking something called DIM, which helps your gut metabolize the excess estrogen so that your periods aren't so heavy. So anyway, I'm working on that. But the problem was that in the past, I've just kind of depleted my body's iron stores. Now, I'm not anemic at all as far as that looks at the red blood cells and the hemoglobin. And the red blood cells was totally fine, right in the middle of the range. But there's nothing for my body to draw on. So my practitioner said, I would like you to go on an iron supplement. And I was like, I don't do iron supplements. So if you guys have followed me for a long time, you know that the two things that I never want anybody to take is iron and calcium. Those, and I'm not against supplements in general because I take quite a few. Magnesium is a great supplement, very well absorbed in supplement form. So some supplements work fine, and it really depends on what you're supplementing with. So I just explained iron supplements constipate you, and it's not the heme form of iron that's found in red meat. It's a different form, and it's not a food form, and it's not easily absorbed, and it doesn't have all the cofactors because your body doesn't just need iron, but it needs copper and it needs B12 and a bunch of cofactors. So I said to her, I was like, how about we do this? How about I take, instead of taking your iron supplement that you want me to take, I'm going to do beef liver, and I'm going to do it twice a day. I'm going to just chop up a little bit into my soup that I'm going to be eating the soups. I'm chop up beef liver, and I'm going to take it with vitamin C, both lunch and dinner. So I've been doing 2 meals a day within 6 hours. Every single meal, chopped up little bits of liver, took vitamin C. And let me be a super big nerd and show you my ferritin level. Where is ferritin? Okay. I didn't make this one into a graph. LabCorp gives you graphs, and it gives you, okay, so my ferritin was 20, hold on a second. Okay, previous result, my ferritin was 20. It went up to, here we go. What does that say? It went up to 79, which is right exactly where it needs to be. Once again, remember, this was 1 month. This was 1 month. In 1 month, I fixed my iron by eating beef liver. Now, this is something I really want you guys to test. It costs $10 to test your ferritin. So you actually don't want to just stuff your body with too much iron. Like a good maintenance dose would be having some liver like once or twice a week. So that's what I immediately moved to when I saw that my iron was 79. I was like, that's good. We don't want to go any higher. Like I said, too high of ferritin, too high of iron is going to give you oxidative stress. You want to be right in the middle of that reference range. About 80 to 100 is really good. I'm 79. I'm happy. 1 month. Okay. But once again, you guys need to test. So I've had a client whose ferritin is 250. And I was like, you need to go donate blood tomorrow because you don't want your blood having too much iron in it. Like I said, causes oxidative stress. Okay, there are so many more interesting labs that I have to share with you guys. So a little bit of background. If you spend some time on social media following influencers, a very bad place to do this is Instagram because people just like to say anything on Instagram. There are people on Instagram all the time telling you that you shouldn't fast. Oh, where did I get my beef liver? So I got some from, you can get it, Carol. I don't remember if you're local or not. I don't recognize your name, so you're probably not. But if you are somebody listening is local, you can get it at the co-op. They have like organic, grass-fed, free-range lamb liver that's really good. I order from a local farm. I get my beef and they give me all of the offal. The offal is like the liver, the kidneys, the heart. Another thing that I do, okay, yeah, so Carol, I have seen it at Sprouts before. I bet Whole Foods has it, and I would bet Natural Grocers. I don't have any of those three stores in my small town, but I know that for sure Sprouts has it because I was visiting my son and daughter in LA and I went to Sprouts and I saw liver there and I bought it because I was in LA just a few weeks ago, well on my diet. So, okay, I'll just give you a little snippet so you guys can know how committed I was to this diet. I did not cheat once. I flew to LA at 10 in the morning because my son had to travel. So his wife just had a baby. So I'm helping them out. And so my plane lands at 10 a.m. I go straight to Sprouts. I get all the ingredients for my soups and start making it, cooking the bone broth, making the liver. Yes, Carol, if you order a quarter beef, ask for the liver. And sometimes I usually get a half cow at a time. And usually the person who ordered the other half of my cow doesn't want any of the liver. So they give me all the liver and all the heart and all the kidneys and all the bones, and I get extra. But anyway, yeah, just ask because even though you only ordered a quarter cow, they might give you all of the good stuff with all the nutrients. So anyway, while I was traveling, because I was staying at somebody's house, I kept doing the soup. And then like the next weekend, I had to go out of town to the district's track meet, which was like 2 hours away, stay overnight, brought my soups. And then the next weekend, this past weekend, we had to go to Boise, which is 5.5 hours from here, to the state track meet for my daughter. And I brought all my soups and did my bone broth. And yeah, so let me really quick, just because this came to mind, give you guys some tips about the difference between finding a good time to plan and finding a perfect time. So there is not going to be a perfect time, but if you have to do something like this really crazy soup diet for a month, and by the way, for those of you who are just tuning in, you do soup for 1 month and then you move to phase 2, which you're not just eating soup, but you're eating like a pretty ketogenic diet, but it's a little stricter than some ketogenic diets I've done in the past. It's like no, I guess one of the difference would be absolutely no nightshades, just because they can be hard on people with autoimmunity or cancer, things like that. So you're not going to do tomatoes, no peppers, obviously no potatoes because we're not doing any starches, no corn. So it's mostly just meat and vegetables. We can have some berries. It's the only fruit we can have, but you got to keep your total carbs under 20 grams a day. So you're not having very many berries, because you're supposed to be in ketosis the whole entire time. So ketosis is the most anti-inflammatory state for the body. And it also has some really interesting effects on the thyroid. So don't mind me. Well, this is my keto mojo. And I just have to brag a little bit about my ketones because here's the deal. If I'm not going to be eating like chocolate and ice cream and a bunch of things full of sugar, my consolation, my prize is that my ketones are higher. So I'm probably really annoying carrying this keto mojo around and showing everybody my ketones, but hey, you got to have some joy in life. So I'm just going through my numbers until I find them. So I'll just give you guys some background because I know not everybody measures ketones and they don't know what it means. So if I pulled somebody random off of the street who's eating the regular ketogenic diet, a regular American diet of processed food and stuff, they would probably have 0 ketones. But occasionally somebody who's thin and what we call metabolically flexible, which means that you can switch between glucose and burning fat quite easily. They might have like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Occasionally I'll see 0.4 on someone who's not on a ketogenic diet. But most people lower 0.1. So if you get to 0.5 or above, that's considered the very beginning of nutritional ketosis. Now, for my cancer clients, I like them to be 2 and above to get into that really deep ketosis state. So I'm almost there. So if you press the button, it shows you your old records. I found it. Okay, you guys. This is actually 5.1. On the screen, it looks like 2.1 because I guess things are being flipped around. I got my ketones up to 5.1. Okay, the only time my ketones have ever been that high is when I was doing a 10-day water fast. And the only fasting I did on this particular diet was I did a 36 with you guys as a group. That was a week from Monday. We did a 36 together, I believe. So I did that one, 36. But other than that, I was only doing 18 hours of fasting every day. And I got my ketones up to 5.1. Like, I don't even have a category for how they got that high. So it was very easy for me to have somebody just like give me the recipes, like this is what you're going to eat, and I just eat it and I didn't even think about it. And it wasn't even, I wouldn't even say it was hard at all the first 3 weeks. Now, when I got to the 4th week, I just could hardly eat the soup because at first I thought I was really sick of soup, but then I realized, and this was the 4th week was when my ketones were in the 5s. Then I realized I just wasn't hungry for anything. And so keep in mind that your cells in your brain are hybrid, kind of like a Prius, which can use gas and electricity. Your cells can use glucose, and they can also use fatty acids. All of your cells except for your brain. Now, your brain does not use fat because your brain is made out of fat. So the 2 options for your brain cells are glucose and ketones. Now, they never switch over 100%. So your brain is never using 100% ketones and 0% glucose. But it gets, instead of using 100% glucose, now it's using like 50-50. And the thing about ketones is they're sort of like rocket fuel, where they give your brain a great big boost. And they also give your cells a great big boost. So that is a good segue for me to explain what happened with my crazy labs and the thyroid hormone I was put on. So here's what happened. Went to a holistic practitioner online, and she said, your thyroid hormone or your thyroid levels are horrifying, because they were. And if for some reason you didn't get the email that I sent out right before, I'll just show you. You see that number all the way over there in the red, which is 48. That number is what's called the thyroid stimulating hormone. So the louder you have to yell at your teen to wake them up in the morning, the more sluggish your teen is, okay? So that's how you have to think about thyroid stimulating hormone. The more thyroid stimulating hormone that your brain has to put out, the more sluggish your thyroid is. So it's an inverse relationship. So the higher the TSH, the lower your thyroid function. It always confuses people. So that's why I'm trying to explain it with an analogy. So if you were to go to the doctor and your thyroid stimulating hormone, a hormone that comes out of your pituitary gland, was on the low end of the spectrum, like say the reference range is like 0.45 and yours is 0.5, then you would have perfect functioning thyroid. Because what that means is that your brain gives your thyroid a little tiny tap, like your kid is sleeping and you give them a little tap and they wake up. That is not a sluggish kid, okay? So your brain gives your thyroid a little tap and it produces hormones beautifully, okay? So low TSH means a well-functioning thyroid. A high TSH, and the reference range is 4.5. So usually people are diagnosed with Hashimoto's when they get to 5. Like I talked to several people that I know personally. They're like, oh yeah, my TSH is 5. I'm like, mine is 48, 10 times above the reference range. That means that my brain is like yelling at this thyroid and it's like, please make some hormone. And it's not making anything. So Anna said, my TSH went from 1.8 to 2 in a year. Should that be concerning? Um, Anna, what you need to do is you need to get your TPO antibodies checked. And your doctor should definitely know what that is. And that is the antibody that your immune system makes against your thyroid. So if you have TPOs, that means that's the reason why that number jumped. If you don't have any antibodies against your thyroid, then you can look at nutrition. So the thyroid needs selenium, is a really important one. It needs small amounts of iodine, not too much, but just seafood. And so when we talk about these hormones called T4 and T3, those refer to the number of iodine atoms in the active hormones. The hormone that your body makes is made out of iodine. So you need small amounts of iodine. And there's a few other, AD and K is a good one for the thyroid. Anna, message me later and I could send you kind of the nutritional protocol. But 2.4 is not bad. It's kind of in the middle and it's fine. Like I said, it's not until you get up into the upper 4s and 5s that it's really concerning. And also, I also would retest because things can just fluctuate based on illness, sleep, stress, things like that. So don't go straight to medication. But so back in February, my thyroid was extremely sluggish, and that was seen by the my brain just screaming at my thyroid to make more thyroid hormone. And then let me just go back to how low. Did I put that there? Yeah. So T4 is a thyroid hormone that the thyroid makes, and it's supposed to be about 1 and above, and in mine was 0.26, so way below what it's supposed to be. So here is where it gets really interesting. Let me go back to what I was talking about. The influencers are saying that you shouldn't fast and you shouldn't eat low carb and you shouldn't eat keto because those things are bad for your thyroid, right? Are you following me? Now, the idea is the thyroid uses glucose. Now, here's my problem with the argument. So the two people that I see other influencers referring to the most are a doctor who's no longer alive. His name was Ray Peat. And even though he's no longer alive, he has this like movement of people that are constantly talking about his writings. It's him and it's Dr. Mercola. Now, Dr. Mercola originally was in favor of low carb and fasting, and then he switched. So here's their argument. Their argument is that if you take somebody, let's take somebody healthy, and they're making an amount of T3. Now, let me back up just a second. I hope this isn't confusing. And if you're confused, just write in the message, can you repeat that again? Two types of thyroid hormones, T4 and T3, okay? T4 has 4 iodine atoms on it, and T3 has 3 iodine atoms. The only one that can bind to the receptors in your tissue and tell your cells how to metabolize energy, produce heat, control your metabolism is the T3. So the thyroid makes a bunch of T4, and that's kind of like a reserve. And then from there, from the reserve that is not active, both your liver and your thyroid itself convert as much as they want of the T4 to T3, as much as they need. And that's also based on the brain, that pituitary gland in the brain sending out the thyroid stimulating hormone. So back to this question about if fasting and low carb are bad for the thyroid. And this is going to apply to everybody who's listening, not just if you have thyroid problems, because I want you to know how to answer the critics. So, and I've done a lot of listening to Ray Peat, there's old videos of his online and I've read his stuff just so I know how to answer the critics and I know what the criticism is. So let's take healthy person. Her name is Susie. I made her up. Susie has a really healthy free T3 of 1.5. That's right in the middle of the reference range. Looks perfect, makes all the doctors happy. Actually, most doctors don't even measure T3. They only measure the TSH, and that is not good. You need to get all the numbers. Too complicated for me to explain right now why. It'll come out later probably. Anyway, so there's a couple different kinds of T3. There's something called total T3, and that would be bound to a carrier protein that shuttles it around your body, but it cannot be bound with the cells. And then there's something called free T3, which is a little bit more expensive to measure. I think it's more like $30. And the total T3 is a little cheaper to measure. Anyway, I'm measuring them all, of course. And I think you should too if anything's slightly off. So Susie has a free T3, that's the active hormone, not bound to a carrier protein, of 1.5, perfect in the middle of the reference range. Okay, Susie starts fasting. Susie goes into ketosis. Susie's ketones go up. Susie goes back to the doctor and she measures her free T3. And instead of it being 1.5, now it is 1.1. I kind of made those numbers up, but they're pretty typical of what would happen. So now, if she actually had a holistic doctor who even measured those, and so these are the holistic people that I'm arguing with, they're measuring and they're like, oh, stink. I did fasting, I did ketosis, my T3 went down. Okay. Therefore, fasting, ketosis, low carb is bad for your thyroid. No one should do it. Here is the problem. I love test results because this is how I argue with people. Like, instead of us just saying, no, it's not bad for your thyroid. Yes, it is bad for your thyroid. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Let's look at some test results, okay? My practitioner put me on the lowest dose of thyroid hormone because she likes to start people there. And then she's like, we'll retest you and we'll double and we'll double and we'll double as we need to. Most people need to go higher. Let's start you with the lowest dose. The lowest dose of thyroid hormone that she starts people on was way, 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 way too much for me. Okay. How do we know that? We know that based on, let me get my labs going so I tell you this exact right number, based on your TSH. Okay. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. It's your brain's sensor of how much hormone it wants you to have. So my TSH, which I told you was 45, it went down to 0.005. Okay, there's a decimal point and then there's 2 zeros and then there's a 5, which is called 5/1000ths. I guess I shouldn't say 5/1000ths. Like, it's almost 0. I'm just going to point this out to you guys to show you this number right here, 0.005. That is my TSH. Last week, it is way too low. Why is my TSH so low? Because my brain is like, this is too much hormone for you. Why is it too much hormone for you? Well, I asked my friend ChatGPT. Let me just pull this up. Like I said, Grok told me that I asked it too many questions, so I had to go to ChatGPT. This is so interesting, you guys, because this is like the bane of my existence, that I get messages from people all the time saying that fasting and someone on Instagram said that fasting and low carb cause your thyroid not to function well and you'd have too much cortisol. By the way, I've gotten my cortisol tested 3 times in the last 4 months, I think, just because I get so many messages from people. So the last time I got my cortisol tested, I was about 2 weeks ago, and I did the saliva cortisol, and it was right in the middle when my ketones weren't yet to the 5 point, but 2 weeks ago they were in like the 3s, which is crazy high. Usually the ultimate goal with my cancer patients is to get them to 2 or above. So the fact that I had ketones in the 3s was amazing. And my cortisol was not high. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny bit low. Okay, I think I told you guys that the other week. I do not have high cortisol, and I was deep, deep, deep in the ketosis. Okay, so that's the one argument. Second argument is that it's bad for your thyroid. Now, here is what ChatGPT told me. So I was like, this is the question I asked it. Okay. A number of practitioners are in favor of low carb diets, and they have noted that when someone transitions to a lower carb diet, The body requires much less T3 to function. But even though T3 goes down, the person still feels well and your TSH doesn't rise. So my practitioner put me on this small dose of compounded T3, T4, thinking that we could increase if needed. But here's something interesting. At the same time I started the med that she put me on, I started an extreme ketogenic diet. And then I told ChatGPT that, sometimes up to 5.1. And according to my TSH, this small amount of thyroid is way too much for me. So here's my question. Why would someone who's deep into ketosis require far less T3 and T4 than someone on a high carb diet? So this is what it said. It said, you're raising a very insightful question, and it touches on a growing area of interest among functional medicine practitioners, which is how the metabolic state, especially ketosis, influences thyroid hormone metabolism and requirements. So let's break this down. Okay. Why does deep ketosis lower thyroid hormone needs? And then it said that lower glucose demands mean that you have a much lower need for T3. Okay. T3 is a metabolically active hormone that ramps up mitochondrial energy production, particularly glucose utilization. In a high carb state, your cells rely heavily on glucose, and T3 drives this metabolism. But in ketosis, your body switches its primary fuel from glucose to ketones and fatty acid, which are more energy efficient. Okay, so I've told you guys this before, but this is ChatGPT. Doesn't know everything, but it's doing some research saying that fatty acids and ketones yield much more ATP per molecule, okay? And they require less T3 driven stimulation for adequate function. The result is that your body's need for T3 decreases in ketosis, yet cellular energy production remains high. Okay, so that was a big mouthful. And basically what it was saying is that when you're in ketosis, fasting, you're relying on ketones and fatty acids, you need very little thyroid hormone to jumpstart those cells to do their glucose thing. This is solving the mystery that nobody could understand, which is my thyroid function was horrifyingly low. And it wasn't good because my brain was interpreting it as bad. But this is what everybody said who I talked to. They said, how are you functioning? Like my online practitioner was like, these are like some of the worst numbers I've ever seen. How are you getting out of bed in the morning? Like, I don't know, because I don't feel that bad. I did feel cold. That was the one thing. I did feel cold, and I did sometimes put like a wool hat on in my house. That was weird. Okay. But I got out of bed in the morning and did my things. So this is answering the question, because when you're in ketosis, you don't need as much thyroid hormone. So it's not that ketosis and fasting ruins your thyroid. It's that your body is very intelligent, and apart from this autoimmune thing, which is aside, when it's functioning correctly, it makes the exact amount of thyroid hormone that it needs and wants. And so that means when you switch to a fasted state and you're more into ketosis, yes, that feeling cold has improved, Sarah, a lot. But now I'm on way too much thyroid hormone, and I didn't take it yesterday because I'm like, this is ridiculous. But when you switch to a fasted state, your T3 production goes down because your body just doesn't need that much thyroid hormone. And I wanted to belabor this point just to point out that there are people on the internet who are talking about things that they don't understand. And they especially like to knock fasting and ketosis. And I don't know why. Maybe they just want a following. Maybe they just want to tell people what they want to hear. I don't know. And I think that Ray Peat himself was actually a very good scientist. I think that he just didn't understand the implications of everything that I'm talking about. And he saw what I just told you, which is that he's like, oh no, somebody fasts and their thyroid hormone level goes down. Fasting is terrible for the thyroid. He didn't think through, well, maybe you need less thyroid. And I've listened to him enough to know that he did not ever think that through. Maybe you need less thyroid. His big thing was the thyroid. And then, I mean, I'm talking, you guys, there's like podcasts and there's like this entire Ray Peat forum online that has thousands of followers. And they're all like, we need to eat sugar like all the time because sugar is so good for our cells and it increases our thyroid hormone. I'm like, okay, eating sugar all the time increases your need for thyroid hormone. So let me just go on a little bit more because there's more things that ChatGPT said that were super interesting. Okay. When you're in a ketosis state, there's an increased mitochondrial efficiency. So let me break that down for a second. Mitochondria are the little powerhouses in the cell that create the energy. Your food is kind of like crude oil. It's raw material, but it's not in the correct form that your cells need to burn. So the cells take either the glucose or the fatty acids and they convert them into more of like fuel, ATP that your cell can actually use. So here's what ChatGPT said. Ketones improve your mitochondrial function and they reduce your reactive oxygen species. What is ROS? It's the fumes. Reactive oxygen species, also known as RS, is the fumes that the cell is creating. And this is what causes us to age. So people, if you go into a ketosis state, and even if you do it only once a week when you're doing the 36-hour fast with me, you're spending 36 hours of your life where you're aging slower because you're producing less oxidative stress. That's what damages our DNA and, like I said, causes us to age. Because of this, the cell's energy needs are met with less hormonal stimulation. You need less hormonal stimulation from the thyroid to get the cell to do what it's supposed to do. And that's what the thyroid hormone does, is it regulates the metabolism of the body and it keeps the energy of the cell going. And if you use ketones, you don't need that as much. It also says there's less oxidative stress triggering the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. I actually don't know what that means, so I'm going to skip it. I mean, I kind of know what it means, but I'm going to skip it anyway. Result. So the same amount or less of T3 does more work. So he says I'm not going to call ChatGPT a he, it says that exogenous T3, T4 is overshooting your need, and that's why your TSH is so low. And then here's one more interesting thing is that ketosis alters deiodinase. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. Deiodinase activity. Let me explain what that is. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's an enzyme that is going to take the T4 and it's going to cut off that iodine atom and turn it into T3, the active kind that can bind with your cells. So when you're fasting and you're deep into ketosis, the D3 activity increases. And that makes less active T3 is produced. So this is super important. I'm sorry if this is a little technical, so go ahead and write me a message if you're not understanding what I'm saying. So here's the reason why I want everybody who has any kind of symptoms, or actually just everybody should get a full thyroid panel. I want you to get TSH. I want you to get free T3, free T4, and something called reverse T4. Reverse T3. Okay, so here's how it works. Start with the pituitary gland in your brain. Pituitary gland sends out TSH, a thyroid stimulating hormone, asks your thyroid to make a certain amount. So the thyroid, if it's working correctly and not inflamed from autoimmune, will make the exact amount that the brain asks for of T4. Now, the T4 can be converted into two different things. It can be converted into T3 and it can be converted into reverse T3. Now, reverse T3 binds with the receptors and keeps the T3 from binding to the receptors. Now, why on earth would your body make reverse T3? Now, let's go back to the fasting haters. The fasting haters say that fasting is too stressful on your body. Ketosis is too stressful on your body. And their proof for that is that when you fast, sometimes your reverse T3 goes up. And they call it a stress response. And they want you to stop fasting because they're like, look, your body's stressed and we can see that by your reverse T3. So my reverse T3 skyrocketed. I had it less than 5 when I had very little thyroid hormone in my blood at all anyway. Of course, I'm going to have very little reverse T3. Now my reverse T3 went up to 30 something. I forget the exact number. Let me see. Let me pull up that email that I sent you guys this morning with my labs. Reverse T3 is 37, which is high. What the reference range? I can't remember what the reference range is because I cut it off. Oh, there we go. Reference range is between 9 and 24, and mine was 37. Okay, why is my reverse T3 too high? Because I'm taking way more exogenous T3 than my body wants or needs. So my body is saying, let's make something to block out the extra T3. So I don't know if I explained that very well, but the main point is that there's a lot of misunderstanding on the internet about what your body's doing. And so I had heard Mary Reddick was doing like a question and answer with someone, and somebody asked her, so why does thyroid hormone go down when somebody goes into ketosis? Because she's a big fan of ketosis. And she said your body just doesn't need as much thyroid hormone when you're in ketosis, but I didn't understand all the implications of that. And so it was so cool for me to see like, oh, wow, somehow my body needs so much less thyroid hormone than the average person because I'm in ketosis. So this is what I want to do. You guys know I like to do experiments. I want to stop taking my thyroid hormone because when I had the really, really high TSH, I still was producing some thyroid hormone. I still was producing T3, some free T3. And I'm wondering if that's enough for me to live off of. But if I start getting really cold, that was really the only symptom that I had was really cold. I guess I was a lot more tired at night, and I did like kind of get exhausted when I was like doing regular housework, just like vacuuming. I would feel like very tired, and I would always ask my husband to vacuum the stairs. And then it was like 2 weeks ago that I was just vacuuming the house. It was like 7:30 at night because we had gotten back from one of these many, many track trips that we've been on. It's been like half my life recently has been going to track meets. So we were getting back from a track trip, and it was like 7:30 at night, and I really needed to vacuum. And so I was just vacuuming the whole house and then vacuumed the stairs. And then I looked at my husband and I was like, I vacuumed the stairs and it's 7:30 at night. So I think that in the past I was so exhausted at night that I wasn't able to do like I couldn't really do much housework, and so that felt like as a change. So I think that I was more tired than I am now. But I kind of want to go off of my thyroid medication, but I'm still thinking about that, and I don't have my next appointment with my provider until June 2nd. But I'm just considering going off and just seeing, because like I said, my thyroid it is still capable of making some thyroid hormone. And now my body has stopped making antibodies. The next step is that just because my body stopped making antibodies and attacking this thing, that doesn't mean that it's completely healed, like the tissue is completely healed. But even when I was in like maximum autoimmune state, I was still making some T3. And so what I want to know is if I can live off of that amount of T3 without taking any thyroid hormone. So I just want to close by talking about why do I think that this worked? Why do I think that doing a diet where I ate a bunch of chicken broth, and so I ate these soups, how will your diet change now that the first month is over? It's a very strict list it's all the meats, except for like if you're eating bacon, I have to make sure that there's no nitrates and sugar. And I was able to find that of all places at Walmart. Okay, let me just interrupt real quick and read what Jerry said. Jerry said that he's been on thyroid meds for a couple of years. I've been following your Substack. I've lost a bunch of weight. I've been cutting mine in half. That's great. I'll get retested soon also, and I'm feeling better on half the dose. Yes, that is another thing, that if you lose weight, sometimes you just need a lot less thyroid hormone. And so Jerry, keep testing and check that. I'm sure you know, but the TSH is a good indicator of how your brain is interpreting the amount of thyroid hormone that you have. So if your TSH is super, super, super low, then you know that you can reduce your dose a little bit. But so why did it work? So this is a question that, you know, that I like to have, I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to think of things from a very scientific point of view, but sometimes we run up against information where you have to realize that our entire model and way of thinking about the human body has been wrong. And it actually goes back to the Enlightenment. So if you haven't studied history, you're probably thinking I sound a little crazy right now, because the Enlightenment is supposed to be the best time in history because it came out of the Dark Ages and all these scientific discoveries. And it's very true. Like, part of it is very true. But there's another thing that happened during the Enlightenment, which is man in his age of reason decided to boil everything down into something that he could understand. So what do I mean by that? It's called reductionism. And it's happened with our understanding of the human body. We have reduced the human body down to something that we can understand. And that's a part of the Enlightenment, is something called empiricism, which is just a philosophical term for not being unwilling to believe anything that can't be empirically proven. And so a lot of people don't know what those terms are that I just used, rationalism, empiricism, but they implicitly believe in rationalism and empiricism without knowing what the term is, or without knowing that there's any other way to think about life. So whenever you talk about an ism, like I said, rationalism, I don't want to think like a rationalist, or I'm not into rationalism, but the alternative is not to be completely irrational. It's a middle of the road kind of rational, where you realize that man's reason has a specific place. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to reason everything out to believe it. So reason, but I'm not anti-reason either. It's just that there's ways of discovering truth besides what we can rationally understand. And if you come at the human body and you come at health with this idea that you will only believe things that you can rationally understand, then all of a sudden you've kind of shut the door on the actual model of the human body that the human body believes in. So just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, you cannot understand everything that's going on in an ecosystem, like I always talk about, like a pond, because there's many, many layers of complexity that are there's too many layers of complexity for the rational human mind to perfectly understand. So this is where you could go wrong. You could go out to the pond and you could take a little petri dish of the pond, and you can measure one bacteria, and you could be like, this bacteria is too high compared to other ponds. So I'm going to take a gallon of bleach and I'm going to pour that into the pond. And then the next week you go back and that one bacteria is now lower, and you're like, I fixed my pond. And what you don't understand is that there's layers and layers of complexity and ripple effects that you just messed up. Everything down to the cellular level. There's algae, there's little amoeba that feed on the algae, and you know what I mean, on and on and on. If you've ever looked at a pond under a microscope, which is something that I loved to do when I was a kid, and I loved ponds, so that's why I keep talking about ponds. But anyway, you understand that there's layers of complexity. So this is what is wrong with our understanding of the human body, is that we don't get to understand everything that's going on. all we have to do is we have to have the big picture, which is that we know in the big picture that if you heal the gut, a lot of times you heal everything else. I don't know how it works, and I don't know that we can know how it works. I don't know if we can know why doing a gut healing diet made my immune system stop attacking my thyroid. I don't know. Like, I don't know why Mary Ruddick, she uses the same diet for two different people. She said this recently in a video, who had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and she put them on the gut healing diet and they went into remission immediately. I don't know why, but this is where you have to step away from being stuck in like an enlightenment, a rationalism, an empiricism kind of worldview. Like, you will only, and this is where the entire mainstream medical community is. They're like, I will only believe something that is proven in a randomized controlled trial. And that is empiricism. That is saying that the only truth that we can possibly know is something that can be proven in a scientific experiment. And there's some knowledge that can be gained by scientific experiments, but it's not the only knowledge. And um, if you are not a Christian, you are totally welcome to listen to anything I say and follow my Substack and what. But just keep in mind that sometimes I'm going to say things that might sound a little bit strange to you, and that I'm kind of more talking just to the Christians. But there is kind of a thought, and that I hear a lot in the Christian world that's thrown around, and it's the thought that your health can become an idol. And nobody said this to me directly, but sometimes I hear people say indirectly, and I'm wondering if they're talking to me. I don't know. And the first thing to think about is that everything, because we're fallen, could be an idol. Motherhood could be an idol. You could like try to live too vicariously through your kids and be like, Johnny, you've got to hit a home run today. Like, you could make your kids into an idol, but motherhood is still good. You could make your marriage into an idol, but marriage is still good. So of course it's possible to make health into an idol, but sometimes I feel like it's said to me in the sense of, you shouldn't spend so much time trying to heal yourself. Just go on the medication and stop making your health into an idol. And I kept thinking about that. I kept thinking about my critics. I'm always trying to win my critics over. I'm not trying to hit them with a baseball bat. But to my critics, I kept thinking about that this last month. I was like, this seems extreme. This is like the most extreme thing that my critics have ever heard of. And by the way, I don't have a big group of critics. I just mean people that are kind of like, she's a little weird. What's she doing this month or whatever? And I was able to do all of my functions, go to all of my daughter's track meets, like do everything that I needed to do with the family while still doing this diet. It's not like I stayed in my house and just ate and cooked soup all day long. I'm still making it fit in. But I was thinking about how this whole like disease was just placed on my plate, and it was given to me as a challenge. And the question was, what are you going to do? And my answer was, I'm going to do the hard thing. And I'm actually going to do the hardest diet that I can find, because something like the autoimmune diet works for some people, but not for everyone. So I'm like, I'm going to do the hardest thing. And I feel like you guys can correct me if if you feel like I'm wrong, but I feel like it would be an idol for me to say, I can't give up my bread. I can't give up sugar. I can't give up chocolate. I can't give up ice cream for my health. That seems like that can also be idolatry, by saying, I have this disease, it's been given me, and I'm not willing to change. And I'm not saying everybody who goes on medication is an idolater or anything like that, but just in the Christian context of, where are we putting our faith, where are we putting our trust, where are we putting our hope? It seems like there's ditches on two sides. So I just want to encourage you that as a Christian who's been given dominion over the earth, and that word dominion is not supposed to mean like harassing the earth or stripping it or anything like that, but it's supposed to be more of a love, like think of a good, loving, like king, like stewardship. We've been given stewardship over the earth, but also stewardship over your body. So if you have the opportunity to heal your body, you should take it. So like if you have, if you're a gardener and you know how to fix some plant that you have in your yard, but you don't fix it, like say it needs some fertilizer and you're like, I'm not going to put fertilizer and I'm just going to pray and I'm just going to trust God that he's going to fix it. I mean, of course we pray and of course we trust God, but that's not opposed to doing something that you think might work. And so I went into this diet completely not knowing if it would do anything. I knew that Mary Roddick had a really good track record and of healing other people, but there's no guarantee that it's going to work for me. But you have to be willing to try. Okay, so I'm just going to read. Jerry said it's a good thing to be a skeptic, and I agree because I am a skeptic with a lot of things that I'm reading on the internet because they're all conflicting. So that kind of makes you into a skeptic. But I tend to find the people that have the best track records, and that's who I follow. So Jerry said that his TSH was between 3.2 and 4.2. I question why I'm on it now that I follow you. I mean, Jerry, here's the deal. If you try going off of it for a little bit, also, Jerry, in the comments, tell me, do you have Hashimoto's? Like, do you have the actual autoimmune activity? Because there's the word hypothyroidism, so with an O, which is different than hyper. So hypo, sometimes people have low thyroid function without having the autoimmune disease. And that would be just a nutritional deficiency. So those are your two options. You could have a nutritional deficiency or you could have the autoimmune activity attacking your thyroid. So it's depending on which two those are. The only other thing would be like if someone were exposed to radiation. And then there's also some like a very, very rare, like congenital, like born with some sort of a birth defect, kind of a hypothyroidism. But in general, it's either the autoimmune version or the nutritional deficiency. So I feel like I need to know that, Jerry, before I answer your question. Because if it is the autoimmune version, then you can do what I did, which is reverse it. So I'm trying to scroll. Jerry said it's a good thing to be a skeptic. Okay. Sue said, I agree about the bread, sugar, etc. being an idle addiction. It's socially acceptable, and the hard job of healing isn't so widely accepted. Okay, so Sue, that is exactly what I'm dealing with. I'm just dealing with knowing that I'm a weirdo and kind of looking like a very extreme person. And okay, so I totally understand where the skeptic people are coming from, because back when I was in perfect health, when I was 20, I kind of looked sideways at the health freaks and I was like, what's their problem? I just eat whatever I want and I'm in fine health. So I understand why they kind of look at me a little weird and they're like, what's your problem? I also wonder if we also make them feel a little bad. I mean, that was probably the position that I was in when I ate whatever junk I wanted. And then I saw someone else eating some like organic chicken broth. And I was like, I probably should be doing that too, but I don't want to. So I'm just going to just look at them. Okay. So Vicky said, pursuing health is not an idol, but eating irresponsible can be sloth or gluttony. Thank you so much. But on another note, I'm curious if your vitamin D went up or not. Maybe gut healing can change that. Okay, I thought that I had mentioned vitamin D in another Substack Live, but I will just mention it again. So here's what happened with my vitamin D. I'm going to give you the whole backstory in like 2 minutes. So like 2 years ago, my vitamin D was very low. Forget the exact number. I think it was 24.4. I raised it in 6 months using cod liver oil plus butter oil alone. So just this cod liver oil supplement. The vitamin D is somewhat low, the total amount in there, but it's very absorbable. and I got my vitamin D up to 69. The 69 was taken in the winter. In December, the end of December 2023 was when I got that 69.2. And so it wasn't even sunlight. And I was like, everybody, y'all got to just do the cod liver oil. It's great. It makes sure that your three most important immunity vitamins are balanced. A, D, and K, wrote posts about it, blah, blah, blah. Come this past year, sorry, the dates are scrambling now in my head. I got a really low vitamin D reading. It was probably in February. Yes, I think it was in February when I got all my thyroid labs done. My vitamin D was like 19 or something horrifying. So then I did a 1-month experiment. I said, I'm not going to take any vitamin D supplement. I hadn't been taking one. And I'm just going to do the cod liver oil plus the butter oil like I did in the past. And my vitamin D went down a point. That was terrible. And I don't know how much of that is related to the Hashimoto's because I still had Hashimoto's at that point. Next, part 3 of the story is that I went on 10,000 IUs of a kind of vitamin D called Sports Nutrition is the brand, and it's made from lichen. And a lot of the vitamin D is made from sheep's lanolin, which would be fine, except I don't think that a lot of time it's like grass-fed sheep. It's more of like conventionally fed corn and soy and stuff. So I just felt more comfortable with the lichen vitamin D. So I went on 10,000 IUs of that. And then it skyrocketed from, let me see if I'm still signed into LabCorp so I could pull up the graph. Anyway, I'm not going to pull up the graph. It went up to 53 in 1 month of taking this sports nutrition. Okay, something strange is that my practitioner said that people who have autoimmune diseases sometimes need some D2 also, which is weird because I always thought we should all be taking D3, but she's like, well, just take also some D2. I don't know why. She didn't explain it to me because when the 1 hour we had together, I had so many questions that we hardly had time to talk about D2. Anyway, she put me on it, and maybe that's part of the reason. So my vitamin D is now, I can't remember what I said, 53, 56, something like that. So then I cut back down to 5,000 IU. So here's the deal. When your vitamin D gets too high, it increases the calcium, the absorption of calcium in your gut, and you actually don't want to have too much calcium. So when you think about vitamin D, you don't want to just go higher and higher and higher. That's not the goal. You want to be like 60 to 80 is really good. 80 is getting a little high just because of the calcium absorption, and calcium can calcify your soft tissues in the inside of arteries and things like that. You need the K2 to make sure the calcium gets into your bones. That's what Weston Price, he originally discovered that research, and then Chris Masterjohn kind of built upon that in the more modern day journals, the fact that you need K2. And in nature, when you're drinking full fat milk from cows that are actually eating green grass, you get vitamin D, you get K2, and you get A all together. And that's kind of what the cod liver supplement gives you. But obviously, I don't know what happened with the cod liver supplement. Worked 1 year for me and then it didn't the next, and I have no idea why. All I know is that my vitamin D is back up to where it should be. So that is great. I just thought of something. So people asked me if I've been taking other kinds of medications while I was doing this gut healing diet. And I don't know if I think I got distracted and I didn't answer that question completely. I am taking thyroid hormone. Actually, I stopped yesterday, but I have been taking thyroid hormone, but I'm not taking any kind of an immunosuppressant. I don't take ibuprofen. Like I said, she prescribed choline dioxide. I decided to wait and not take that because I just wanted to see what the gut healing diet could do on its own. She prescribed something called low dose naltrexone. I also you start with like 1 drop and you're supposed to work up to like 18 drops or something. I did it a couple of times and then I just stopped, and I was like, I just don't want to do anything else except the gut healing diet this month. So basically, no. I haven't been tested after I've been following you. Okay, so Jerry, I would definitely test your TPO antibodies. Vicky says I'm not a weirdo. I'm just a peculiar one. Thank you, Vicky. Yes, it's a hard knock life sometimes. Okay. Sue said, others have told me I'm judging them just when I started my journey of healing Wasn't even talking about them though. You are definitely not a weirdo, or at least if you are, you're in good company. Yeah. Okay. So I don't actually care that much what other people think of me, but I do, like I said, I want to like bring people along and be like, okay, listen, you may not have to be doing all of these health things right now because you're in really perfect health, but you should support other people who are willing to do it. And one thing that's been interesting in my family is that we all have such similar problems. And two of the people who have very similar problems to what I have are not blood related to me. They're married to my children. But I just remember at the very beginning when my kids were first getting married, and we started, this was like the first time that we started dealing with like gluten free and not being able to eat certain things. I was all of a sudden like, oh, I have to cook gluten free now. And I remember that being like such a weird thing for me. And now here I am like eating nothing but chicken soup. So I've come a very, very long way. And so now both my son-in-law, Sean, and I are both on stage 2 of Mary Reddick. So he did it the month before I did. And just in case you guys missed this, I think I talked about in the previous live, but he had very severe, and he gave me permission to share this with you, including his first name, because I don't blab about my family members' health unless they give me permission, but gave me full permission to share this. So he did the Mary Roddick diet the month before I did. He's had very severe food allergies for a long time, lots of sensitivities, lots and lots of inflammation in his gut. He did the GI map with Genova. He's been working with many different holistic practitioners, tons and tons of inflammation in his gut, food sensitivity, stuff like that. So my daughter is just the biggest trooper in the world. She did the Mary Ruddick diet for him right after she had a baby, like cooked all the soups and all that stuff. So he did it for a month straight, and he had previous blood tests from his allergies. His numbers were in the 50s. He retested his blood after doing the Mary Ruddick diet, and one of his was like 0. Like his allergies were healed, and all of his holistic doctors, with the exception of Mary Ruddick and Natasha Campbell McBride, everybody else says you can't heal allergies. But he did. Now he's not eating those foods yet. He's just doing the blood allergy for them, and because he just wants to give himself, I think he said another 9 months to heal before he even adds in any extra foods. But his blood allergy of those foods just like went away in 1 month. So back, once again, we've just got to be okay with the mystery. And I feel like that's what modern people have lost, is the ability to like understand that there's a mystery that we can't fully explain, but that doesn't make it not true. Just because there's not a randomized controlled trial showing that this works, just because we don't understand all of the different healing mechanisms in this body with just infinite levels of complexity. We think of the microbiome as being just our gut, but the truth is that we have a microbiome in our eyes right now, hundreds of little tiny bacteria. We have it in our scalp, we have it in our ears, we have it in every organ of our body. There are microbes that are crawling around, and there's little worlds within worlds within worlds. And when you think about it that way, it kind of feels like, how could you possibly heal yourself? Because there is all this complexity. But then somehow when you fix this gut, you fix everything else. I don't understand how it works. I don't think we can. But I always talk about, just the best thing that I've ever read is this chapter in Gut and Physiology Syndrome called the Soil Within Us. And she likens the analogy of our gut to a plant that has roots going down into the water. And the roots inside of us are these little villi that are inside of our intestines. And they actually have hairs on them. So you have like the finger-like protrusions in your gut that's giving you a lot more surface area for the absorption of food. But then on each of the finger-like protrusions, the villi, is something called microvilli, which are hairs. And so they're sucking in nutrients. And those microvilli look very much like root hairs of a plant. And so if you plant something in polluted soil, the plant is going to be, it's going to wither, the leaves are going to have spots on them, it's going to be brown. But the same thing is true of our gut. When we have a polluted gut, when there's glyphosate Roundup in there, when there's heavy metals, when there's toxins from our water, when there's just medications in there, and it's just disrupting the billions, I think maybe even trillions of microbes that exist in that gut, then all of a sudden the roots of our body are feeding on a toxic river of sludge. And that's causing autoimmunity. I've showed you guys the graph many times that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine showing that autoimmune diseases is just spiking like 10 times. Like my mom always says that when she was in high school in the 60s, she didn't know a single person with autoimmune disease. We didn't even know, they didn't even know what those words meant. I mean, there was no Crohn's, there was no rheumatoid arthritis. And the modern industrial world is just ruining our bodies. But the cool thing is that you can heal. So yeah, if you just are wanting to like jump on board right now, you can just go to maryruddick.com and then go to the little button at the top that says shop, and there's her guides. But some people might not be able to afford that $99. So in the next 2 months, like I said, I'd like to make her plan a little bit more accessible for people by just writing my own recipes and just kind of giving you guys a way to do it that's a little cheaper, so you don't have to buy the $99 guide. I do think if you have the money, I do think it's worth it. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in the guide also. But on the other hand, I'd like to make it more accessible. And I think like it would be a good thing for a lot of people to do, even if you don't have an autoimmune disease. The thing about the soup recipes is that you're eating very particular vegetables that don't have any of the plant anti-nutrients. So they don't have any oxalates, which are little tiny crystals that can build up in your tissues. Spinach is the highest oxalate food. They don't have any lectins, which are plant proteins, which are very harmful and cause autoimmunity in some people. And they don't have any phytic acid. That's something that binds to minerals in your gut. It's in wheat and a lot of plants. And by the way, all these things are only in plants. You're not going to find these in animal foods. They don't have any solanines. Solanines is something that are in potatoes. And if you are in like absolutely perfect health, you can handle all of these things. But if your health is compromised in any way, or you have the genetic mutations that I have, you might not be able to handle those plant nutrients. And so just giving your body a month break from that is just like your body's just renewed. Julie would like me to respell Mary Ruddick's last name. So it's spelled RUDDICK. And it's Mary Ruddick. You just go to maryruddick.com. And she has a bunch of guides there. She has one on cancer. She has one on autoimmunity, weight loss, dysautonomia. Sometimes it's called POTS. She healed herself from dysautonomia. She was sick for 12 years, Mary Ruddick was, and bedridden for about 4 of those years, I believe. And she did the GAPS diet, and that completely healed her. And she said at that time nobody had ever recovered from that stage of dysautonomia. Of course, POTS is a very mild version of that. That's when you stand up and your autonomic nervous system is not properly regulating your blood pressure. And so people will get like very fainty. So obviously people have recovered from that, but nobody had ever recovered from her late stage dysautonomia before. And if you go onto YouTube and type in one of her videos, it's so interesting to explain how she healed herself, and then all of the stories she has in practice from healing herself. So any final questions, go ahead and drop them in there. But probably in June, when I get through the month of May, I will try to actually write up a post where I talk more about it. But I see a few people just joined in, and basically what it is I stopped my immune system from attacking my thyroid in 1 month, which is basically unheard of. And this is going to be kind of a long journey because I don't know what the end game is. So now I'm on phase 2. I'm not eating just soup, but I am still eating very autoimmune friendly. And I'm going to go back and retest those TPO antibodies because I'm just so excited to see if maybe they're now below the 34 mark. 34 and below is remission, just because I guess it's normal to have some random antibodies floating around. But the way that mine were tanking, like, what if they even went down to like 0? That would be so cool, but we shall see. So I don't see any questions in the question box, so I am signing off for now. But yeah, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.